President, one of the great privileges of this job and the honor of representing Oregon in the United States Senate is seeing the way Oregonians of all backgrounds and beliefs come together to support those who wear or have worn the uniform of the United States military. When it comes to honoring our veterans, Oregonians and so many across the country think in terms of patriotism, not politics, and certainly not partisanship. There's not a Democratic or a Republican way to support our veterans. There is an American way. So I was very pleased recently to join Senator Moran and Senator Tester to introduce bipartisan legislation that would expand the presumption to veterans exposed to Agent Orange in the Korean demilitarized zone. The VA currently presumes that veterans who served in the Korean DMZ from 1968 to 1971 were exposed to Agent Orange. But there's evidence that veterans were exposed to toxins all the way back to 1967. Our bipartisan bill would extend the presumption date back, making it easier for veterans to apply and be able to receive care and benefits. It is a good bill, it is a bipartisan bill, and as we head to Veterans Day, I want to make it clear I'm going to do everything I can to make this bill law soon. I also want to take a few minutes, given the fact we'll all be home this weekend, to discuss another bipartisan piece of legislation that's important to the welfare of our veterans, and a proposal that recently became law. A few years ago, Mr. President, I learned that wounded members of the National Guard and Reserve were losing out on benefits under the GI Bill for time that they spent in rehabilitation and recovery. These are men and women who put their lives on hold to go serve our country abroad. And when they suffered injuries in the line of duty, their time spent recovering didn't count toward GI Bill benefits, even though they did it for active duty service members in the same situation. I think it's an understatement to say that is certainly a real head scratcher, to not stand up for our Guard and Reserve to make sure that they are not losing out on benefits under the GI Bill for the time they spend in recovery and rehab. So in effect, the federal law was adding insult to injury by robbing wounded guardsmen and reservists of benefits they earned and should have been receiving all along. Estimates show that more than 20,000 service members across our country were affected. So I approached our friend and colleague from Arkansas, Senator Boozman, and he graciously agreed to team up with me, and Senator Boozman made it clear that a fellow from Arkansas and a fellow from Oregon were going to team up, leave the politics behind, and fix an injustice. So we brought together a bipartisan group, we worked with the Veterans Affairs Committee, and we were able to get the bill across the finish line. So as of now, wounded guardsmen and reservists will get the education benefits they've rightly earned, and I want, especially today, when people are asking about the divisiveness and polarization that now consumes so much of the political debate, I wanted senators to know that I really appreciate Senator Boozman always trying to be constructive and be a problem solver, and this is one problem that is getting solved. The law will also apply retroactively, meaning that eligible veterans who already lost out would be made whole. And because it is so counterintuitive for service members to lose benefits for being wounded, just think about that one. Service members losing benefits for being wounded. many of our veterans haven't learned that they were missing out. They just never knew they were missing out. So that's why I'm very pleased, as I know Senator Boozman is, that our law applies retroactively to all service after the 9/11 attacks. Now, I think it's also true, up here, that success has 1,000 parents, and if I thanked everybody on both sides of the aisle for all the work that went into this important bill, we'd be here till supper time tonight, Mr. President. But I do especially want to thank our colleagues, Senators Markey and McCain. They lent important support along the way, as did Chairman Johnny Isaacson and Ranking Member John Tester. And Representative Mark Takano of California has also been an exceptional advocate in the other body. I also would like to give a special thank you to Major Steve Warren, a Department of Defense fellow in my office at the dawn of the process. He is considered a real rock star in terms of working for veterans. He did so much to bring this injustice to light and then worked diligently toward a solution. And I think it is pretty much the judgment of everybody involved that without Steve's inspiration and perspiration, it's hard to see this injustice being fixed and our even being here today as we head to Veterans Day to talk about it. So I close by way of saying that in this time of partisan rancor and the back and forth that consumes so much of the political debate in Washington, I think what we have shown with this piece of legislation and its importance that our veterans continue to be a unifying force. And this goodwill comes from a deep respect for the all-volunteer force and for the sacrifices made by military families. It also stems from an appreciation for the role our veterans play in so many communities. In Oregon, our vets are small business owners, they're coders, they're mill workers, they're educators. They help students at the Youth Challenge program in Bend, and they help us fight fires. And suffice it to say, this year, those fires were big, they were long, they were brutal, and we saw fires nobody could have even believed could happen, such as the one that jumped the Columbia River. So it doesn't mean that Congress, even with this legislation, always gets it right with respect to veterans. There's a whole lot more to be done, particularly ensuring timely access to top quality health care through the VA or outside of it, and to ensure that guardsmen and reservists get treated fairly and equitably. And I have pledged to Oregonians, I want to say this again on the eve of our taking time out specifically to honor veterans, although in our state we believe that every day is really Veterans Day. And I just want to renew my pledge to the people of Oregon that I and my staff will keep working until our vets receive the care and treatment they've earned. And we hope the success of our GI Bill fairness law demonstrates what can be done when the Congress sets aside all this business of trying to point score on partisanship and puts veterans first. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.